Hello, Seton 5th and 6th graders. Today we are going to create a holiday card. This card, it's a little hard to get the picture in. I hope you can see this. We're drawing a small perspective drawing using our horizon line and our vanishing point, our perspective point. So these are two things that we've learned in the last two videos. So if you haven't really seen those, it would really be best if you go back and watch those first, because there are a lot of things that you're going to need to know. To get started, this is art. We anticipate our mistakes. We respect the creative process, and we try until we are satisfied. Today, you are going to need a pencil. You're going to need a piece of paper that is folded into quarters. So you have a full sheet of paper. This is a slightly bigger piece of paper than an 8.5 by 11. An 8.5 by 11 should work just fine. And then you fold it in quarters, giving you a nice sort of a thick card. And I did mine in landscape mode. So I had my paper, my pencil, and I also folded a straight edge. This is something also that you can learn from one of the earlier videos. So last week or the week before, both of those videos, I show you how to fold your straight edge. And that's all we need to get started. This is not going to be an assignment that you hand in for a grade. So the pressure's off. This is just something to do, to have fun, and hopefully to send to somebody happy holidays, to send to a friend or family member, somebody that you're not going to get to see. It could definitely brighten their holidays. So let's just get started. All right, so we're going to begin with a piece of paper folded into quarters. So I have my, regular piece of paper. Make sure you just give it a really nice even fold in one direction. Doesn't matter which you fold first, and then fold it in the other direction. Since I did mine landscape mode, I folded it in half the short way first, and then flipped it the other way. I have a mark. I don't know what that's from. So I'm going to put a border on this. So I'm going to stick my 4 dots in the corners. I like to do this. This gives me a little guide point for where I'm going to draw. And then I just, make sure that they're the same amount of distance from every corner. And then I just slowly connect the lines, or connect the dots with the line. And this line is not going to be perfectly straight, but it's going to give me a really nice guide. And I just match it up. When I draw my line, I just match my pencil the same distance all the way down to the edge of the page. When you do that, it gives you this ability to, kind of follow a guideline. And it really makes it, sometimes things don't always work out, so let's just get rid of that. But if I go slow enough, I can keep my pencil the same distance from the edge the whole way down. And not only am I following my line toward the end point on the corner, but I'm watching everywhere I draw to keep my pencil the same distance from the edge. And that helps to give me a really straight line. And you can just change your lines if they don't go exactly the way you want them. This is a nice forgiving thing about graphite. This is a card, so I'm going to take a little extra time to get this right. So here we go. I've got my 4 borders, and everything I draw will be within those 4 borders. So I'm going to try not to go outside of that border, and then that gives me a nice edge around my card. It makes it look a little more, a little less like an invitation, a little more like a card. And so I can always write my inscription. Now this leaves the place for the inscription inside. And so I'm going to want my horizon line. I'm going to want to put some kind of a horizon line. It doesn't have to be, in fact, I don't want it to be straight. It's a snowy, this is going to be a wintry, snowy scene. So I'm going to just draw sort of a slight wave in my line. And I'm not drawing it right at the middle of the page. I'm drawing it a little bit higher than the middle of the page. That gives me more room to draw a house. And then I'm going to put a kind of right down the center of the page, but higher than my perspective, than my horizon line. I'm going to draw my perspective point. It does not have to be directly in the middle, but the closer, the better. And then, so then I'm just going to start. I'm going to mark off where I want my road. I don't want this road to take up the entire bottom, so I just kind of mark off, the width of my road. And then I'm going to connect the bottom width of my road all the way to this perspective point. But I can stop drawing right at my horizon line, so I don't have to draw all the way to the perspective point. If I do, I'll have to erase that later. So I just draw from the bottom of my picture to the horizon line, but I'm matched up to that perspective point. So, and as you can see, my road goes all the way to the horizon and it ends. Now, my road is actually going to go in between some of the backdrop. It's going to go in between some hills. So on one side of my road, I'm going to sort of just draw a hill sweeping up. And then on the other side, I'm going to draw another hill sweeping up. And, not straight. And then I'm going to draw some hills to sort of cover up that back space. I don't want that back space to be totally open. So I'm just going to kind of draw a few more, little hills in this area to sort of fill it in. And so you can see that my road actually goes in between. And then I kind of fill in the background with some little hills. And then I have my sky up above. So this, just sort of gently curved lines. And I can kind of go over these, just darken them a little bit. And we'll come back to this backdrop later, but just to get something in here, make sure you can still see your perspective point. Okay, so now I've got my road going in between the hills. This is a great basic drawing. No matter what you want to add, you could draw this drawing 100 times and put different stuff in the foreground. So I'm going to draw my house. I need a square with a triangle on top is my basic shape. That's the part of the house that's facing us. So a square with a triangle on top, but all in one shape. So I'm going to draw the square part first. And now this is just snow. So I'm just going to, at the bottom of I can actually just draw the snow right in here by kind of putting a little wavy line. And now I'm going to add the triangle shape on top. And this takes a little bit because sometimes my triangle shape is not quite right. It's a little uneven. I need it to come down a little bit further, so I have to widen my little square part on the other side. Okay, so now this is just like our other drawings. We're going to take the corners. There are 3 corners here, and we're going to connect those corners all the way to the perspective point. Actually, I don't have to go all the way to the point. I can just go pretty far out. I don't have to go all the way there. I can just go kind of to the horizon line. Okay, so I just draw over to the horizon line. I know my house is not going to go that far back. So again, I'm just going to draw toward the horizon line and an end at the horizon. And then I'm going to do the top of the roof, the peak of the roof, straight to the perspective point, to the vanishing point. Now I'm going to draw my parallel line. So I draw parallel to the roof. I draw the same angle to finish the roof. And then straight from the roof down, I draw up a line that matches the side of the house. Now I can erase the rest of my lines because I don't need all of this line right here. And now I have a 3-dimensional house that kind of goes back in space. And this is really, and just like that, it's pretty simple. So I want to make this the details of my house. Now, I want to make some snow on the ground. So I kind of, I want to make sure that this looks like it's in the real world. So I can add a few things. I'm gonna just sketch in first, like a little tree. And this is simple, sort of triangular shape with some little almost segments, because it's going to look segmented. I'm going to just do all of my trees pretty similarly. I want them all to look like they're covered with snow. So they're not going to be, they're going to be mostly white with some shadows in there. So I kind of make a few segments in the tree. And all of my trees are going to be a little stylized like this. Makes them a little easier, and they kind of look more exciting. So I'm going to have this scene lit from behind, sort of like a sunset going down. And so that's going to help me decide where my shadows go. So I'm going to imagine that the light is coming from the back of my picture. So I'm going to put one more little tree at the back corner of the house. So I have one at each corner. Just gives this a little, I usually like an uneven number of trees. So we'll see. I'll put maybe a few on the other side of the picture. Okay, so now I've got my basic shapes in here, and this also is a segmented tree. This tree that I'm drawing in the back is actually probably taller than the one in the foreground. It just looks smaller because I'm drawing it just to the top of the house. So here's my sun back there, and I'm not going to draw it in, but that's where my source of light is coming from. So I'm going to imagine that the shadow is coming from my perspective point, just like we did in the other shadow drawing. So the side of the trees that I see are going to be mostly in shadow. Okay. And snow shadows, by the way, are blue. So don't forget that. If you were going to draw the snow in a shadow, you're going to draw it blue. So I'm going to draw the shadow of my house. And I just connect it, since my sun is right where my perspective point is. I'm just going to draw my shadow in the same perspective point. That I'm just going to draw sort of the same shape of my house, but coming out on the same line as my house did. And that's not always going to be the case. That's just the case in this drawing because I made the sun be where my perspective point is. So I'm going to color this. I'm going to color this. So this would all be snow, and it would be snow in shadow. So if I was going to color this with colored pencil, I would be coloring this blue. Because any shadows on snow end up being kind of blue. I'm going to put a window and I guess a door in here. Just something to make it look like this is an open place. So just adding the details is sort of the fun part, because now all of this is really small. So I'm going to add some lines going across like wood, and I just kind of add a few quick lines that you don't have to draw each piece. You can just draw a bunch of kind of lines going straight across. Don't try to connect all of those pieces exactly. And then I want to draw wood on the other side of my house. So let me just fill this door and window in. give it a little depth. So when I draw the wood panels on the other side of the house, I'm going to match them to the line of the roof and the perspective line. So they're going to come just like this, as if I was drawing, and I could actually draw them individually toward the perspective point with my ruler. Now I want to make it look like this side is in shadow, so I'm going to darken it, just like, and when I go through, I can just go right over and I can just shade it in even a little bit more, maybe almost like a cross hatching, because this is the darkest side of my house. Okay, let's make it look like there's a little bit of snow. Maybe make a little wavy line here on the eaves, so it looks like there's some snow resting on the house. Don't make those lines so straight. All right, let's pop a couple trees in here. And these are going to be shaded the other way, so that you're going to imagine the shadows of these coming from the perspective point, just like the house. But they're not going to be, there are no clear angles, so you're just going to have to know that the shadow is behind the tree. So I'm going to make the back side of my tree, this would all be snowy, mostly snowy blue. But I'm going to just draw in, this tree is the closest one to us, so I'm going to draw in a little more detail. I'm just going to imagine that it's triangular shape-ish, but put a little bit of texture like a pine tree would have, or an evergreen. And now I have to remember that my shadow is mostly this whole back side. So I'm just going to kind of draw in some little details. I want those segments like I did on the other tree. They don't have to be perfect and they don't have to be even, but it's really nice to just include some detail. And then I'm going to put, well, we'll put at least one more in and see how this looks. Just get this shadow. You can see where the shadows are going to be. You can imagine that if the sun is back there, the shadowed side is going to be opposite the sun. So even if I don't draw the sun in, I think my sun is pretty much set. That might give me, it's behind the hills, but still, shining up in the sky. So this is definitely the sunset hour. Long shadows that kind of stretch out. So these two trees overlap. The one that I drew behind the first tree, you can tell I have to kind of erase some of the other tree out of it. So, when two things overlap, the one that's closest to us is in front. You can see it. Okay, just going to quickly add a little bit more shadow in here. And this is really close to being done. I can erase my vanishing point now that I've kind of imagined my shadows. Oh, and I can pop a quick, this adds a little bit of warmth. I'm going to put a quick chimney in here, and it's a little bit of a rectangle with two sides, and I'm going to draw the side closest to me. Make sure to draw that darker. And then maybe a little wisp of smoke just coming out of there to make it feel like this, the hearth is on, the hearth is lit. And then put a shadow again. Pop a little shadow in there. Okay, so we're mostly done, I would say. And that's how quick this goes. But I just want to shade in, because the sun is behind all of this land. I want to shade in very lightly. And so I always go, the furthest mountains or furthest hills away are darker, are the lightest. And then gradually as they come closer, they get a little bit darker. Now I'm just being careful not to, since this is all one color, if you did this in other colors, you could use different shades of white or different shades of blue to show that it was shadowed. And so this one's going to be slightly darker than the one in front of it. And then these ones in the front, I'm not quite coloring all the way up to the line because I want to keep these three, all of these hills separate. And I also kind of want to remind us that there's a little bit of light bouncing off the top of these hills. So I don't color all the way to the edge, and that gives me that effect. I can come in anyway, and I will probably, and just use my eraser and sort of, I'm going to blend some of this out. And then erase those lines at the top to put a little bit of light. I got a little dark spot in there. Colored a little too hard, but that's not a problem. And we can just pull out some of the light with the eraser and just lighten up the original hills. And if you did this with colored pencil, you could pull some light out still. So just pulling a little bit of light out, whoop, and giving the background a little bit of texture. And I think I'm going to make darken up the edge of my line and make it a little uneven. Give it a little bit of texture. The snow is not quite, it's not a perfect edge of the road. This is an old country road. So, and maybe I can darken in some of my shadows, make sure that all of the shadows are this tree is not very dark. I could add a little more in here and bring out some of the snow. So what's nice about a winter drawing is that anytime you want to erase anything, you can kind of add snow anywhere you're erasing. So I'm going to darken some of my shadows, make sure I put the shadows in for my tree. And again, the shadows go on the same angle of the perspective point. So even if it doesn't seem quite right at the time, it actually is. So there. It's pretty much done. I mean, I can always, actually, I feel like I need one more tree in here. I'm definitely an uneven. I like uneven numbers, so I'm going to pop one more. Just one more. 2 and 2 seemed a little bit too symmetrical, so I'll just pop one more tree in here. And these go quick. They're not very hard at all. So I'm just going to darken this side of the tree, and that's pretty much it. We got 3 trees on one side, 2 on the other, and I feel like this is pretty much finished. It's time to just write a quick message. I'll be kind and speed this up for you because I like to take my time when I write something. So it takes a while to make nice print. So there you go. Happy holidays with love from Mrs. Herbst. And there is your card. This is pretty much the finished version. I usually like to come in and touch it up. It's really hard to know when to stop when you finish a drawing. So maybe give it a little touch up after you've opened your card up and you get one more look at it. Sometimes it helps to just walk away, I'll darken this shadow at the corner. But there you go. At some point, you have to just be done and say, I like it the way it is. I'm ready to give it away. And there is the finished product. Congratulations, you guys did it. I hope your cards turned out. I hope you are enjoying the way your picture looks. If not, rewind, make another one. Sometimes it takes a second try, and hopefully you'll be able to edit your first try a little bit and maybe have 2 cards to send to friends and family. And if you want to, like always, take this idea and maybe add a second house, add a couple more trees, add some more hills. Please get out those colored pencils. You know how to color this in. I think it would look really beautiful. I hope you have a fabulous holiday. I hope you have a very Merry Christmas. And I am looking forward to seeing you again in 2021. Have a wonderful end of your year. Bye.